Welcome to the podcast Women Ending War with me, Dr. Elana Sztokman, a Jewish American Israeli feminist author and anthropologist, and my co-host Eva Dalak, a Muslim-Palestinian citizen of Israel, world-renowned expert in conflict transformation and peace activator. Together, we are here to demonstrate that there is another path, that peace is possible, and that women must lead the way. We are on a journey to activate peace. Thank you for being here with us. Okay, welcome.
Welcome. Salam alaikum.
Salam alaikum salam.
שלום עליכם.
מה שלומך?
אני בטוב.
You're good. Okay.
כאן בנווה שלום.
We should move to English.
Yeah.
What language are we?
We're in English, yeah, I forgot.
Salam alaikum. Kif halak?
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
I just did a 2 days training on trauma-informed approach in Hebrew, so I'm still like in the Hebrew language. But yeah, I'm doing good. I'm actually doing, I'm tired,
Yeah.
but I'm good. I'm happy to see you.
I have to see you also.
Yeah, we haven't seen each other since Costa Rica.
Costa Rica.
That was like nearly a month ago. So
Uh-huh.
it's good to see you here.
Nice to see you here.
Yeah.
It's very different, Costa Rica and Israel.
Yeah, at the same time, it's nice to do it here in Neve Shalom, which is the oasis of peace in Hebrew.
Really an oasis, yeah.
Yeah, and I found like if there's any other place in Israel right now where I would want to be is here. Yeah, especially with everything that's happening.
Yeah. We're in the middle of starting a new war front, or it started a new war front.
And I was in Haifa actually a couple of days ago before coming here, and I left just as it started, so feeling blessed.
On my way here, there were sirens going off in Haifa and Akko and Krayot. And
My heart is just with my friends and family that are in the north. And so being in a space of trauma-informed approach seems appropriate.
So what does that mean?
That means that we're aware that we are traumatized, and the person in front of us is traumatized, and the environment is traumatized. And so if we are aware of the traumas that we inhabit or that inhabit us, then we can bring a bit more sensitivity and kindness and softness to the conversations that we have. And I just did the training of trainer for a network organization in the Alliance for Middle East Peace.
We interviewed them. We interviewed Naveen from Almep.
Yeah.
She was great.
She is great. It's
164 organizations, she said.
Yeah, working on peace together.
I talk about that all the time, by the way. That made such an impression because, you know, we hear so often like, oh, there's no partners. Oh, there's no alternative. Oh, this is a war of no choice. And I'm just like, just click on Almep. Just to see 164 organizations that are all dedicated to something else.
Something else to activating peace. I really like, for me, it's a great model of peace activation. And that's what they invited me to do with their member organization, to do a peace activation. Basically activating the peace inside so that we can work better and more appropriately with the peace that we're doing outside.
Amazing.
You know?
So what does that look like in practice, like trauma-informed
approach? So what it looked like is sensitivity and awareness to how I feel in the moment, and awareness that I might bring the past into the present, and a lot of somatic, I'm working on embodiment, so a lot of somatic experiencing, breathing technique, mindfulness, presence, like presence in the present, and again, softness and awareness of the need to take a moment and stop and drop to your heart. I really love this sentence, like stop and drop to your heart. Like right now, whoever is listening, please take a moment, take a deep breath.
It is hard. Wow.
It is, because when you stop and you drop into your heart, you see your heart is broken. And you don't want to touch that. You feel the pain and you don't want to touch that. You feel the hurt and you don't want to allow that. And so, it's been a beautiful weekend of people opening up. Wow. Really feeling safe and intimate. And so I must say that this was a specific Jewish Israeli group, including settlers. And in 2 days I do the same with a Palestinian group, only Palestinians. And then after that, I do another couple of days with Palestinian citizens of Israel. And I think that was a great choice and decision by Olmec to separate, to do the work separately so that each group can really feel their specific trauma and their specific narrative and be just present to oneself rather than present to the others.
Interesting. Sorry, we're sitting here in the Elana, and there are some noises. I hope that it's okay. I'm not sure what that is. That's like some kind of machine.
Yeah.
Should I go check? All right. Hopefully it'll be okay. So that's interesting what you're saying about the difference between doing the work in groups or in pairs or in dialogue circles and all of that versus letting each group have their own sort of moment, their own experience, their own specific context.
This, and also realizing how much even within one homogeneous group, we're not homogeneous, and how radically different we are, and how already just within that group there's already so many triggers. So you don't want to add external trigger in addition to that. So I think it's a wise choice. It's an important choice right now, not because it's not the time to do common work, which I think it is, but also because we need to step back and drop in. Really step back and drop in and understand me as a Palestinian in Israel. I'm triggered, I'm traumatized. How can I bring myself and hold space for me while holding space to you, hearing your narrative that is triggering for me, you know? And I love that. I love that because I think that it's the only way forward is in. The only way forward is in.
My friend Jackie used to say that. She used to say the only way around is through. That's what she always said. You have to go through.
And yesterday I had a talk with another friend, Israeli Jewish friend, who said, you know what? You triggered me in your podcast because you used the word genocide. And like, how can you do that? How can you speak about that when you're like a peace activator? I'm like, wow, you're activated. That's great. This is my narrative. And I'm not imposing it to you. And she's like, well, how do you transform conflict if you're triggering people that are peace activists? And I'm like, if you're triggered, it's your responsibility to deal with it. My responsibility is not to trigger you. I can do.
And also, they should watch our discussion about genocide and our like hashing it out about using that word.
Yeah, and also the fact that me being aware and sensitive to myself while still being present to what's going on is really important in the sense of like, I cannot be sensitive to myself or insensitive to myself in order to be sensitive to you. I have to be sensitive to myself in order to be sensitive to yourself.
Right. We have to be loyal to ourselves. Also, we have to, like, I talk about this a lot also, I have to be loyal to my needs. I have to be loyal to who I am and my needs. At the same time that I'm listening and trying to be empathetic and compassionate to the other and hearing the other, but I also have to. So it's complicated. I get that a lot, by the way. I get a lot of feedback. It's probably the most common feedback I get about our podcast is you use the word genocide, right? It's like, but I, as a Jew, I've said this, as a Jew, I totally get what the trauma around the word genocide is and how can you compare anything to the Holocaust kind of thing? But what it does is it blocks the being in the triggered state without what taking responsibility for your triggeredness. It blocks, connection. It blocks truth. It blocks awareness. And we have to face, realities of what actually is happening and also be able to listen to other people and, break down the processes of dehumanization that we were socialized into about, thinking like, oh, well, they're all dying, but they don't count. They're not people. Effectively, or that's different, or that's somehow different, or somehow they deserved it, or well, they're asking for it, or they did it to themselves, or we have all kinds of language to justify, and so that whole trigger, oh, I'm triggered by the word genocide, is also part of the like, oh, well, I'm triggered, therefore I don't have to take responsibility for what my government is doing because, oh, well, so there's a lot of that going on also.
Yeah, and I think what we can bring in a trauma-informed approach, what we can bring to it is compassion. It's really compassion to where we are at. I have a lot of compassion to what's going on for me, for my people, for my family, for my colleagues, for my friends.
Yeah.
And at the same time, hold space and compassion to what's going on for you, for your family, for your community, for your people. And so that's where we meet. It's not necessarily in comparing who is suffering more,
Right.
but it's actually we're meeting in a field beyond right doing and wrongdoing, which you did in such a beautiful post. In this field, that's where I want to meet you. I don't want to meet you in like, I'm right, you're wrong, you're right, I'm wrong. It just dehumanized me. I want to meet in a field of humanity.
Yeah.
And in that field, I want to be able to share that I'm broken.
Yeah.
You know? And it's okay. It's okay for me to say that, even if you don't agree with it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's really, ultimately, that's what we want to convey. That the conversation that we're having are radical. And some of it will trigger people, and some of it won't. Some people will agree, some people won't agree. And it's okay.
Yeah. Wow, that was beautiful. I feel like you summarized like the whole purpose of the work we're doing. Not just the podcast, like the podcast is part of a larger body of work and activities. You're involved in a bunch of things, and I'm involved in a bunch of things. And I feel like being able to articulate that sort of vision of like how we change the reality, I feel like is really important. You know, sometimes when we're sort of reviewing and getting feedback and stuff about our first season, we got a lot of really amazing feedback, and also like this sort of sense that there's like a zillion things happening and it's a zillion directions, and like where do we focus and stuff like that, and that's true. There are a zillion things happening. Like I had a conversation today with a friend of mine who hopefully will be on in season 2 also, we were talking about what's going on in the north, and new trauma is evolving every day. And also she was telling me about some terrible things that are happening within Israel, especially to the community of Palestinian citizens of Israel who are being actively silenced. If someone says that, oh, maybe we should have compassion for people in Gaza, maybe some of them are innocent, even just to say that, is a punishable offense. And so she was talking about that, and I sort of said, like, every time I think that there's not more that can depress me, I learn more. But that's sort of like, that sort of feels the situation that there's, it's coming at us from all directions, and sort of on purpose sometimes. Like I really do blame the government for purposely distracting us, trying to keep us in fear, keep us in helplessness, keep us in powerlessness. And it works. There are many moments when
it works if you're not aware.
Yeah.
It works. I really want to emphasize that it works, because if I'm not aware, they will take me to this place of powerlessness. But it's my responsibility to take my power back and to take responsibility for like, okay, this is where they want to take me. My choice is, and my decision, I'm not going there. I'm not going there. I'm staying centered in my loving. I'm staying centered in the field. And I'm understanding that there's some kind of programming manipulation from above that is trying to make us kill each other. And I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there. And I'm not going to go there.
Yeah.
And that's what enables us right now, a Palestinian Israeli and an Israeli Jew, to sit together and we'll have this discussion, because we understand that we both are on the same side.
And we're taking back our power by talking.
Yeah.
By talking and speaking.
Speaking up.
Speaking. That's our power. Somehow I feel like that is the only power
that's
feel like.
The raw lioness word.
I just, because it's hard. There is, I do struggle with, I've said this before also, I struggle with the powerlessness. I do struggle with, even though I really embrace what you say, and it's beautiful, and I agree with you, but it's not always easy.
It's not easy, and it's not constant. This is really important. It's not it's not that I'm feeling powerful all the time. And most of the time I don't. But I feel my power is, how can I come back to my heart? How can I find compassion for myself and for the situation, for the other? How can I still be in the loving? How can I still be in that field? And take a breath. And that's where, the somatic experiencing, the mindfulness, the yoga, the meditation, all this self-care tool take their place without taking over. And that's what I was teaching here, is like, really, yes, we need to take care of ourselves. We need to find the inner peace. But one person was like, so we're going to be working on like inner peace and self-care for like I don't know, 8 months and one day we'll be able to act outside for peace. I'm like, absolutely not. You're doing it in parallel.
Exactly.
You're doing it in parallel.
In
We have
parallel,
to have
exactly.
the peace inside so that it's the peace inside that enable me every day to show up for the work that I have to do on the ground that is traumatizing, that is devastating, that is like filled with disappointment, anger, doubt, etc.
I love that. I mean, we've talked about that also, about the sandwich, you know, that they have to come together. Like, you know, your work here is on the one hand, it's grounds. It's a grassroots type of work. It's internal, it's personal, it's individualized in a certain way, but also, you know, it doesn't negate the top-down change. You know, we need the top-down change. We need the protests. We need the change in the political system, and we need the change in the government, and then we need the change in political ideas. And also, by the way, change in cultural ideas, change in public discourse, change in the words that we use and the language that we use, sort of top-down cultural political issues. And we also need, you know, that work on individuals and how we as each individual take responsibility and do the internal work of peace. It can't go one without the other. It actually reminds me, like, you know who wrote about this like 25 years ago is Ruth Halpern Kadari. She's a professor of gender at Bar-Ilan University, and she wrote a book, Women in Israel, A State of Their Own, and she refused it. What was really interesting was she wrote it in like the late 90s. And in the 90s, there was a whole series of legislation, very feminist legislation in Israel. You know, Israel was ahead of the game in a lot of the legislation about sexual harassment and about paternity leave and a whole bunch of other things. And she wrote that even though there was legislation, it didn't really change facts on the ground. So, for instance, even with the issue of paternity leave, like Israel was one of the first countries to enable fathers to take full leave and all of that, but only something like 0.01%. So I think that there are a lot of reasons with it. You know, my kids are now parents, so like we've talked about this at home and stuff. There are complicated reasons, but what she wrote, which I always think about, was that it's not enough to just change a law if the culture on the ground is not changed. And so, but on the other hand, you can't just try to change culture without having systemic change. We talked about that a lot also with Fakhira. We talked about that a lot about, you know, why Oslo didn't work because, you know, it didn't address systemic change also, and it didn't address larger cultural issues. So it really reinforces this idea, which also guides me. And when I think about what I want for this podcast it's the sandwich thing, that you have to do both. You have to be doing the personal work, the personal and communal and, you know, societal work on interactions every day, interactions at the same time that we're working for political change, systemic change, governmental change, all of that. Like it's together for me.
Yeah, and for me, it's really, if we want to change a culture, we need to go to that culture and see what it fits. I remember the example that I have is that when I first went to do gender training in Congo 23 years ago, something like that. And there was such a rejection towards the word gender and towards the work that is being done, etc. And I say, okay, well, and they're like, there's not even a word like this in our language. I'm like, okay, what word would represent the fact that we're including everybody in the work? And they're like, oh, community. I'm like, okay, replace gender with community. Would that feel better? And and it was integrated within seconds.
Interesting.
Because what they couldn't understand was like, we want gender equality. They understood when we need to have everybody in the community included when we're doing like inclusive X, Y, Z.
Interesting.
And so I feel like for this paternity leave and for everything that we want to, any systematic change that we want to do from up and want to bring it down, it needs to go together. It has to be like, where is the ground? What's the ground level? What's the level 0? And if I want to go to level 1, how am I going to do it together, hand in hand, in a participatory and inclusive way? So.
And also what's happening now in the next 2 weeks is, you know, October 7th is coming up. And so that is bringing up a lot of stuff. And also, you know, October 7th happened on a very big Jewish holiday of Simchat Torah. And, you know, we're staring at Simchat Torah, Jewish holiday. Simchat Torah is supposed to be the happiest day of the Simchat Torah, the happy day. The happy, right? And, you know, I don't know what that's going to look like.
A trigger.
I mean, if we felt like, oh, well, we're over it, you know, we've gotten past the but we're not. We're smack in the middle of it. Not only are we smack in the middle of it, but it feels like it's getting worse. The hostages are still there. There's more war fronts. Soldiers are being called back into Gaza. So I don't know what that is going to mean. And it's really alarming in its own way. And plus there's all kinds of dynamics internally in Israel and political issues and, Ben Gvir and all that. And so I don't know what this holiday season is going to look like. I mean, we're entering the Jewish holiday season, and what? And I keep asking, who are we? Who are we with all this? I mean, we haven't. Our leaders have not prioritized life. They haven't prioritized life. We want to see ourselves as Jewish people, always, always choosing life, and we have not lived up to that, even a tiny bit at all. And so there's something deeply spiritually devastating happening here, something so broken that I don't know if we're ever going to be able to get it back. That we cannot trust our leaders to represent the most sacred values that have supposedly kept us, that we can't trust that when we need it most. That is a deeply crushing blow. It's crushing it's a betrayal of everything you dedicate your life to. I'm 54 years old. I've pretty much dedicated my entire professional and personal life to the Jewish people in one form or another. And I am feeling a lot of not such good feelings, a lot of remorse, regrets, betrayal. I think it's mostly betrayal. And really asking myself if all the things we Jews like to say about ourselves are true. Are they true? We Jews like to say lots of great things about ourselves. Maybe it's part of the dysfunction, that we're too quick to say nice things about ourselves. I mean, that really might be at the root of it. But I'm just saying, there's something so devastating. And coming back to it on October 7th and Simchat Torah and all of that, I don't know what that's going to look like. And thank you for listening to me, sort of spill all that. That was that was a little personal for me, because I am struggling with my Jewish identity at this moment because of this, because of the sense of who are we? And also what are we doing in Gaza? I can't really cope with the idea of that we're doing this in Gaza. And, so many of my people are justifying it with all kinds of things, including in the name of the Jewish people. And I'm don't represent me. Don't represent me with this. No. And this is also a really hard conversation. And wow, has this caused lots of rifts this past year, or even before also, to tell you the truth. But I'm having I have to say, if I'm being honest with myself, I'm having a little bit of I don't know, maybe crisis is a too big a word. Maybe I need some trauma-informed work. Maybe I'm traumatized from
I think you are traumatized. I'm traumatized. Everybody's traumatized. I think we are in a traumatized environment, and every single person here and abroad is traumatized, because what we're dealing with here is a traumatizing event. Just that is bringing awareness to the fact that we are traumatized, and that would allow the compassion. The awareness would allow the compassion and would allow the space in the heart, because it is broken. We're all broken.
We're all very broken.
So thank you for sharing.
Thank you for holding space for me.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. You've been listening to the podcast Women Ending War. I'm Dr. Elana Sztokman, and my co-host is Eva Dalak. If you like this, please subscribe, share, like, and comment. Links to our channels on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple are below. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Substack. And please consider supporting us financially. We need your help. Link to our GoFundMe page is below. In peace, salam, and shalom.